The fintech revolution sweeps across the globe. What should the average investor be thinking of?
Well, I think interesting with that question, there were two recurring themes yesterday in the presentations that I heard that I think are very relevant to this. The first is that our industry is really quite highly complex. A huge amount of companies out there selling an enormous range of products. And I think that actually is one of the biggest challenges that our end investors face, is just understanding what it is that we're presenting to them. So I think that actually a key part of my advice to end investors is to think really carefully about what it is that you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. What are your goals from making an investment? And why are you approaching the investment industry in the first place? And I think that's much less about fintech than it is about what you as an investor are trying to get. Mm-hmm. So actually, when you think about what is fintech, then I think fintech becomes two things. It becomes something that makes our industry much more accessible to the end investor, makes them feel comfortable with what it is that they'll get when they approach us. But also for us as an industry, fintech is about how do we take cost out of our business and make the value that we present to those investors all the greater.
Yeah, fully agree with that. I think the other thing to bear in mind is who has your data. Yeah. So as we increasingly move to a cyber world, who are you giving your data to? How strong is your level of trust with that organization? What do they do with your data? What controls do they have in place? So always be mindful of, once you enter that data into the digital world, you need to be aware of where it goes. So I think asking the tough questions before you give your data is very important.
Role of big data helped asset managers meet regulatory requirements.
Well, I think this is quite a difficult question for the industry as a whole. I think just as we start to feel as if we're getting a handle on the data required to satisfy the existing regulatory landscape, new regulations come along. So I think at the moment, I look at my clients and I think they've just got over the challenge of the competition review requests in the UK. I think a lot of companies really struggled with that from the feedback I got. Right now, they're also looking at how they become MiFID II compliant, which has a big data component to it. And GDPR obviously has a huge data element. So I think at the moment, I would say that big data hasn't really been a solution for the industry. Mm-hmm. It's an ongoing process of how do we satisfy an ever-increasing need. And for me, I think part of the challenge here is that lots of the industry still has quite a lot of legacy infrastructure which houses all of this core data. And each time the regulator asks us a new question, we have to go back to those systems and answer a question through a completely different lens to the one that the systems were designed to think around. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, is the big challenge. How do we move from a world of legacy data in legacy core infrastructure to one where we really empower the organisation through big data? And I think there's still quite a significant journey to go on for most organisations.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we have been all dealing with a tsunami in many cases of new regulations, new data requirements from regulators and from investors, and increasingly actually from tax authorities too. So the impact of FATCA and the BEPS, the BEPS review means that the amount of data that's required just to service your existing client base is more than it's ever been. So that's why technology is so important, and innovation is the key to doing that, to gathering that data, to providing it efficiently, to collating it, and then ultimately to go beyond what the regulators require and actually ensure that your investors really have the information that they want. That's the key.
It requires sophisticated data and analytics, reporting tools, and online delivery of information to clients on demand. How has technology really changed how you interact with investors?
So I'm going to start answering that question by just doing a small PwC plug, if that's okay. So we've done a piece of thought leadership that we've just released. It's called Sink or Swim, and it's specifically related to the wealth management sector. And the conclusion of the report that we've done is basically that unless you get ahead around the fintech digital agenda as a wealth manager, there's a great danger that there's a survival issue for you as an organisation. Mm-hmm. Now, why I think that's important to the asset management industry is that over the coming years, I think it's very clear that the asset management industry as a whole is going to need to get much closer to its client base. So whilst this is a burning platform issue for the wealth management industry today and potentially a survival issue, and whilst it's not so critical for the asset management space, I can see there's a trend that will head in our direction. And unless companies really start to think about how do they present their data, their organization in a much more digital way to their clients, then in the future you can see that that will be a differentiator that will see organizations struggle to succeed in the market.
So I think the key, Simone, is that the industry keeps pace with where investors are going.
Yeah.
So as investors become more comfortable with digital, more comfortable with technology, the industry needs to keep pace with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's open to disruption by a third party who is just better able to adapt to the technological needs of the investors. That's the big danger for the industry.
Natives, millennials are more concerned with being in control of their investment decisions and have a tailored experience. How are asset managers becoming more personal and attracting top data talent?
So I think in terms of the personalization journey, it's really, I think it's about tailoring rather than sort of personal human interaction. And I think we're just starting to see that happening today in terms of things like robo-advice. The idea that you can interact with somebody and tailor a solution to them individually by asking them questions about themselves and getting answers. So I think that that's very much nascent. It's in its earliest days at the moment, but I think that's a journey that will go on over time, especially as more and more of our clients become millennials who are very happy to interact just with technology. There's a very interesting piece of research done recently that showed that the most important thing in a robo-advisor is a phone number to speak to a human being. And I think that's very much robo-advice of today, with my generation speaking to a robo-advisor and wanting somebody to talk to. I think 20 years from now, it won't be that way. People, the millennials of today, just trust technology in a way that my generation don't. And I think that therein lies a bit of a challenge for us as an industry about how do we attract talent into it. In particular around the sort of FinTech data agenda, what you would think of as being the quite sort of sexy technical end of things. I think that financial services as a sector has taken a big hit in terms of its credibility with young people following the crisis. We don't register very highly on anybody's desirable markets to move into as an employer. So I think we have to be aware of that as a background context. And whether you believe that that's applicable to asset managers or not, the truth is people just see us as being part of financial services. So I think we have a significant challenge around attracting talent. And in fact, I think that means that we have to almost consider different ways of working with that type of skill set and innovation. I think we need to be going and partnering, doing joint ventures, and creating and working with companies who can have a bit more of a Google mindset. I think we have to be honest and say that a traditional asset management environment is not one that nurtures a FinTech startup particularly easily.
So I completely agree with that. I think there is a war for talent. I know it sounds like a cliche, but there really is, for really good data talent, digital talent. Back to that cyber risk point again, having people really understand cyber. So I think I completely agree with Paul. I think are you attractive to millennials yourself? So what are your policies around things that matter to millennials, around flexibility, diversity, issues like that, gender balance. So you got to get that right to start with. But you're also competing with organizations who are really good at that already. So you've really got to get there quickly. I think the second is exactly to Paul's point, is how you partner with other organizations. So some great fintechs out there that lots of people don't know about. So you have to go and discover these. You have to spend some time, things like startup boot camps. We've run some of those at PwC. And it's really spending some time to understand what these companies can offer and what talent they have. And do you want to partner with them? It may be just for the talent alone, but make sure you get there before a competitor does. That's how you can differentiate yourself.
Opinion, what does the future of big data and asset management look like?
Well, I think that's probably the killer question in some ways, and it's a big question. I've had the conversation with a number of my clients around how do they address this challenge, and one of the key recurring themes is, well, Paul, if we had a blank sheet of paper and we were starting again, it wouldn't look anything like it does today. And I actually think that you need to take that philosophy a little bit further forwards. I think it's really important that you build a target operating model, a future vision for what your organization is going to look like, and in particular the technology that supports that, with data absolutely at its heart. Because at the end of the day, our industry does not have a car rolling off a production line. We don't build an iPhone or an iPad. What we are at the end of the day is a data business. And it makes perfect sense to me that we should be building target operating models absolutely with data at their heart, that think about the needs of all of the different stakeholders. And in particular, you think about, well, who's actually making the investment decisions? They need really good quality data. Our clients, they need really good quality data to understand what it is that we're doing for them and how they might make different decisions. And ultimately, of course, the regulator, we need to be able to show them that we're doing all of these things in a well-controlled way that thinks about the client's needs. So for me, it's very much about having a design that you're working towards. And you might never actually get there, but I think if you're making all of your decisions in the context of a future design that has data at its heart, then you're going in the right direction.
And Simon, I think the important thing here is to put all of this in the context of where the industry is going overall. So where do we see the industry in 2020 and beyond? We expect the industry to be much bigger. We predict the industry will be above $100 trillion by 2020. That'll be global AUM. That's massively important in the context of the real economy, how that money is allocated, how it's managed, how it's invested. And I think technology can be the catalyst to ensuring that the industry manages some of the challenges around margin compression. They need to be in multiple geographies, dealing with multiple regulators, to do all of that effectively and to ensure ultimately that the trust that's needed by the investor is inherent within the industry can only be done by technology and through good use of data, by working on the target operating model, but ensuring ultimately that you're really focused on taking advantage of new technologies as they emerge and ultimately staying relevant to your investor. And technology is the key to that.